I'm Maxine, 28 years old, and what should have been the happiest day of my life turned into a nightmare of family betrayal. My fiancé Ryan and I had planned our dream wedding, but everything changed when my father refused to walk me down the aisle. His reason: your sister is uncomfortable with all the attention you're getting. In that moment, my heart shattered. I looked him straight in the eyes and said, "Thanks for showing me who really matters to you." Little did he know, my backup plan would make him regret everything. Before I continue, let me know where you're watching from in the comments and hit that like and subscribe button if you've ever had to stand up for yourself against family who should have supported you. To understand how we got to this breaking point, you need to know about my family. I grew up in a middle-class suburban neighborhood in Michigan with my father William, who's now 58, my mother and my younger sister Natalie, who's 30. Our family seemed normal from the outside, but beneath the surface things were complicated. My mother was my rock, loving, supportive, and always there for both Natalie and me equally. She made sure we both felt special and loved in our own ways. I remember how she would sit with me for hours, helping with science projects, cheering at my soccer games, and telling me I could achieve anything if I worked hard enough. Those memories became even more precious when she was diagnosed with aggressive breast cancer when I was 11. The year she fought cancer was brutal on our entire family. Dad tried to keep things together while working full-time and taking Mom to treatments. Natalie, only 9 at the time, became clingy and emotional, which was completely understandable. I took on more responsibility around the house, trying to be strong for everyone. When Mom died just after my 12th birthday, our family dynamic changed forever. Dad completely withdrew emotionally. He went through the motions of parenting, keeping us fed, housed, and in school, but the emotional connection seemed to die with Mom. Except with Natalie. Whether it was because she was younger, looked more like Mom, or was more openly emotional about her grief, Dad focused almost all his emotional energy on her. The favoritism that began in those early days after Mom's death only grew more obvious as years passed. Every Christmas, Natalie's pile of gifts would tower over mine. For her 16th birthday, Dad surprised her with a brand new car. For mine, a card with $50 and a mumbled happy birthday before he left to take Natalie shopping. When I graduated high school as valedictorian, Dad skipped the ceremony because Natalie had a minor dance recital the same day. "You understand, right? She needs the support more than you do," he said. I nodded and pretended it didn't hurt, but it did. That same year, he missed my scholarship award ceremony, but took 2 days off work to drive Natalie to auditions for a summer theater program. College was another clear example of the disparity. Dad paid for Natalie's entire education at a private arts college, including an apartment near campus. Meanwhile, I cobbled together scholarships and student loans for my business degree at the state university and worked 20 hours a week at the campus bookstore to cover living expenses. Despite all this, I kept trying to win his approval. I graduated with honors, secured a great job at a marketing firm, and always made time for family gatherings. I told myself that if I just achieved enough, he would finally see me. I made excuses for his behavior, thinking he was still grieving Mom or that Natalie simply needed more support than I did. Natalie's personality didn't help matters. From childhood, she had mastered the art of being the center of attention. Any accomplishment of mine would be immediately overshadowed by some crisis or achievement of hers. Got accepted to college, Natalie suddenly had health issues that needed immediate attention. Promotion at work. Natalie coincidentally decided that same week she needed to move back home temporarily because of roommate problems. The pattern was so predictable that my college roommates used to place bets on how quickly, after sharing good news, Natalie would create a drama. The worst part was that Dad never saw through it. Every single time, he would drop everything for her while dismissing my feelings as selfish if I ever dared mention feeling overlooked. "You've always been the independent one, Maxine," he would say, as if my self-reliance was a reason to withhold love rather than a trait forced upon me by circumstances. "Natalie needs more support. You should understand that by now." And I did try to understand. I accommodated Natalie's jealousy and Dad's favoritism for years, stepping back at family events so she could shine, downplaying my achievements, even pretending to need help occasionally, just to feel like my father cared. I became the family peacekeeper, the one who smoothed things over, who never rocked the boat. I believed that maintaining family harmony was worth the price of my own feelings. Looking back, I can see how unhealthy this dynamic was, but at the time it just felt normal. It was all I knew. And despite everything, I still hoped that someday, somehow, things would change. Everything shifted when I met Ryan at my coworker Jasmine's housewarming party. I wasn't even planning to go that night. I had a big presentation the next day and wanted to review my notes. But Jasmine insisted, saying I worked too much and needed to meet actual humans occasionally. Thank goodness for persistent friends. Ryan was Jasmine's neighbor, invited as a courtesy, since the party would likely be noisy. He stood out immediately, not just because he was 6 feet 3 inches tall with a warm smile that reached his eyes, but because of how attentively he listened when people spoke. In a room full of people interrupting each other and checking phones, he was fully present. We connected over a shared love of true crime podcasts and terrible sci-fi movies. What started as casual conversation by the snack table turned into 4 hours talking on Jasmine's balcony, completely oblivious to the party winding down around us. By the end of the night, we'd exchanged numbers, and I went home feeling something I hadn't felt in years: seen. Our first date was at a small Italian restaurant, where the owner still made pasta by hand. Ryan asked questions about my life, my dreams, my opinions, and genuinely cared about the answers. When I mentioned my family in passing, he noticed my slight change in tone and gently asked more questions. Before I knew it, I was telling him things I'd never told anyone about growing up in the shadow of Natalie and my father's favoritism. Instead of dismissing my feelings or telling me to just get over it like some friends had, Ryan validated my experience. That must have been incredibly painful, he said. And it explains why you apologize so much for things that aren't your fault. I hadn't even realized I did that. As our relationship deepened, I began to see my family dynamics through Ryan's eyes. His family wasn't perfect. His parents had divorced when he was 15, but they maintained respectful relationships and showed up for each other consistently. His mother and father both attended his college graduation together, took separate photos with him, and genuinely celebrated his achievements. When we visited them for holidays, disagreements were discussed openly, rather than swept under the rug. It was eye-opening to see how a family could function with healthy boundaries. After 18 months of dating, Ryan proposed during a weekend trip to northern Michigan. We were hiking at Sleeping Bear Dunes at a scenic overlook where my mother had once taken our family when I was young. I'd mentioned to Ryan months earlier how it was one of my few perfect memories with both my parents before Mom got sick. He remembered and planned the whole trip around revisiting that spot. When he got down on one knee with a vintage-style emerald ring, he'd remembered I once mentioned emeralds were my mother's favorite. I couldn't stop crying. Happy tears for once. The proposal was perfect because it showed how deeply he knew me and honored my past while looking toward our future. My excitement about the engagement was initially met with lukewarm reactions from my family. Dad said, "That's nice, honey," and immediately changed the subject to Natalie's latest community theater role. Natalie herself sent a brief congrats text 3 days after my announcement, then called the next day to talk for an hour about her new potential boyfriend. Despite their reaction, I was determined to have the wedding of my dreams and hoped that such a significant life event might finally help heal some of our family wounds. I created detailed Pinterest boards, researched venues, and threw myself into planning with enthusiasm. The first signs of trouble appeared about a month after the engagement, when we had an initial family planning dinner. Dad, Natalie, Ryan, and I met at Dad's house to discuss general wedding ideas. Surprisingly, this first meeting went well. Natalie asked appropriate questions about the venue and seemed supportive. Dad even offered to contribute some money toward the wedding, which I hadn't expected. Driving home that night, I was hopeful. "See, I think this wedding might actually bring us all closer," I told Ryan. Ryan squeezed my hand but said gently, "That would be wonderful, Max. Just keep your expectations realistic. Okay, people don't usually change overnight." 2 days after our planning dinner, Natalie called Dad to announce she was moving in with her boyfriend of 3 months. Dad immediately organized a lavish dinner to celebrate invited extended family and gave a toast about his little girl growing up. The boyfriend seemed bewildered by the fuss over what he clearly considered a practical financial decision. I tried not to compare it to his subdued reaction to my engagement, but it was hard not to notice the disparity. Still, I pushed forward with wedding planning, determined to stay positive. I even asked Natalie to be one of my bridesmaids, though not maid of honor. That spot went to my best friend Layla, who had been there for me through everything. Are you sure that's a good idea? Ryan asked when I told him I'd included Natalie in the bridal party. You know how she can be when she's not the center of attention. She's my sister, I replied. Besides, maybe giving her an important role will help her feel included rather than threatened. Ryan didn't look convinced, but he supported my decision. It's your wedding, babe. I just want you to be happy. If only I'd listened to his concerns, because that's when the real wedding drama began. Including Natalie as a bridesmaid was my first mistake. I thought giving her a special role would make her feel valued and prevent the usual jealousy issues. Instead, it gave her front row access to every wedding decision and the ability to criticize each one. The bridesmaids group chat I created quickly became a battleground. My other friends would share excitement and ideas, while Natalie would respond with comments like, "That color scheme is so overdone," or "Isn't that venue a bit pretentious?" Layla started texting me privately after particularly negative comments from Natalie asking if everything was okay between us. 6 months before the wedding, we scheduled a bridesmaids brunch and dress shopping expedition. Everyone confirmed attendance, including Natalie. The morning of the event, just as we were about to leave for the restaurant, Natalie texted that she couldn't make it because she woke up with a migraine. I was disappointed but expressed concern for her health. 20 minutes later, she posted Instagram stories of her and her boyfriend getting breakfast at a cafe downtown. When I gently confronted her later, she became defensive. "You don't understand how migraines work." I felt better suddenly, so we went out. Am I not allowed to feel better? Rather than cause a scene, I apologized for misunderstanding. Ryan witnessed this phone conversation and shook his head in disbelief as I apologized to my sister for catching her in a lie. The dress shopping incident was even worse. Natalie finally joined us for the second attempt, but her mood was sour from the start. When she realized Layla would be trying on maid of honor dresses while she looked at bridesmaid options, she created a scene in the middle of the boutique. "So I'm just another bridesmaid," she said loudly. "Your own sister isn't good enough to be your maid of honor. Some random college friend is more important than family." The boutique owner looked uncomfortable as Layla tried to smooth things over, explaining she and I had been best friends for 12 years. I took Natalie aside to a private sitting area. "Layla has been there for me through everything," I explained quietly. "This isn't about you not being important." "It's never about me, is it?" Natalie snapped. "It's always about Maxine the perfect, Maxine the smart one. Maxine getting married first, even though I've been with John longer." That wasn't even true. She and John had been dating 5 months at that point, while Ryan and I had been together over 2 years. But facts didn't matter when Natalie was in a mood. When I called Dad that evening to vent my frustration, his response was predictable. "You know how sensitive your sister is, Maxine. Couldn't you have found a way to make her feel special too? Maybe you girls could have co-maids of honor or something." "Dad, that's not how weddings work," I tried to explain. "And she's 30 years old, not 13. This is my wedding." "Yes, and family should come first," he replied sternly. "You've always been the mature one. Can't you just accommodate her on this? It's not like these wedding titles really matter." They mattered to me, but as usual, my feelings weren't the priority. To keep the peace, I created a special sister of the bride role for Natalie, with a slightly different dress and a special mention in the program. She accepted this compromise with poor grace, making it clear she was doing me a favor. Things got worse when I discovered through my cousin that Natalie had been spreading rumors about Ryan to extended family members. She had told my aunt that Ryan was controlling because he had suggested a smaller wedding than I initially wanted. In reality, we had decided together to keep the guest list to 100 people to stay within our budget and keep the event intimate. When I confronted Natalie about undermining my relationship, she erupted. "I'm just looking out for you. Mom would have wanted me to make sure you're not being manipulated. If you can't see it, that's not my fault." The argument escalated until she threatened to boycott the wedding entirely. "Maybe I shouldn't come at all if you think so poorly of me," she said dramatically. "Then you and your precious Ryan and Layla can have your perfect day without me ruining it." As always, Dad took her side immediately. He called me that same evening, voice stern. "What did you say to your sister? She's crying her eyes out. Why are you trying to exclude her from your wedding?" "Dad, that's not what happened at all." I tried to explain the situation, but he interrupted. "I don't want to hear excuses, Maxine. You need to apologize to your sister and fix this. She's family. These friends of yours come and go, but family is forever." By this point, wedding planning had become a source of constant stress rather than joy. I found myself compromising on more and more details just to avoid conflicts. The spring garden venue I loved was changed to a hotel ballroom because Natalie complained about her allergies. My dream of a sunset ceremony was adjusted to midday because Natalie mentioned the lighting would be unflattering for photos. Even my choice of wedding cake flavor was contested because Natalie hated raspberry filling. Ryan became increasingly concerned about the toll this was taking on me. "I barely recognize you anymore," he said one night after I spent hours crying over another wedding dispute. "You used to be so confident at work, so clear about what you wanted. But with your family, you become this apologetic shadow. They're using your wedding to control you, and it's not right." It was during this difficult period that I met Ryan's uncle Jack at a family dinner. Jack was Ryan's father's younger brother, a tall, distinguished man in his early 60s with kind eyes and a gentle manner. He had retired from the Air Force and now worked as a high school guidance counselor. Something about his calm presence immediately put me at ease. While helping me clear dishes after dinner, Jack quietly said, "I notice you seem stressed about the wedding. If you ever need someone to talk to who's a bit removed from the situation, I'm a pretty good listener." That simple offer of support from someone who barely knew me meant more than I could express. I found myself tearing up and had to turn away to compose myself. Jack pretended not to notice, continuing to talk about neutral topics until I felt steady again. As the wedding approached and tensions with my family escalated, I began to realize that Ryan was right. The dynamic with my father and sister wasn't just annoying or difficult, it was deeply unhealthy. For the first time, I started to question whether I needed to change my approach entirely. 3 months before the wedding, I decided to have a special lunch with my father to discuss the ceremony details, particularly him walking me down the aisle. Despite all the tension and disappointments, this traditional father-daughter moment still meant everything to me. I pictured him in a sharp suit arm linked with mine, finally looking proud as he gave me away to start my new life. I spent the morning of our lunch feeling oddly nervous, as if I were preparing for a job interview rather than a meal with my dad. I chose a nice restaurant downtown, a place that served his favorite steak, and arrived 15 minutes early to secure a good table. I even brought photo printouts of father-daughter wedding moments to share, hoping to make him feel special and included. Dad arrived 10 minutes late, muttering something about traffic. From the moment he sat down, he seemed distracted, checking his phone every few minutes and glancing around the restaurant. When our appetizers arrived, I decided to broach the subject. "So, Dad, I wanted to talk about the wedding ceremony," I began, trying to keep my voice light and excited. "The coordinator needs to know who's walking down the aisle when, and I thought we could discuss what song you'd like playing when we walk together." Dad put down his fork and gave me an odd look. "About that, Maxine, I've been meaning to talk to you." Something in his tone made my stomach drop. I set down my water glass carefully. "I think it might be better if I don't walk you down the aisle," he said, not quite meeting my eyes. The restaurant noise seemed to fade away as I struggled to process his words. "What? Why are you not feeling well? We can make accommodations if you're worried about standing too long, or—" No, it's not that," he interrupted, finally looking at me. "It's just that, well, your sister is uncomfortable with all the attention you're getting. The wedding is already hard for her, seeing you get married first and all. If I'm walking you down the aisle, it puts her in an awkward position as just a bridesmaid." I stared at him, waiting for the punchline to a joke that never came. "Dad, this is my wedding day. Walking your daughter down the aisle is a tradition that means a lot to me. Natalie will have her day when she gets married." He shook his head, looking annoyed now. "You're not understanding, Maxine. Natalie is going through a lot right now. Her relationship with John is in a rocky place, and watching all this wedding stuff is triggering her anxiety. She's family, and we need to be sensitive to her needs." "And what about my needs?" My voice cracked slightly. "This is the most important day of my life." Dad sighed heavily, like I was being unreasonable. "Don't be so dramatic. It's just one day. There'll be plenty of other special moments. The important thing is keeping family harmony. You've always been the strong one, the independent one. Natalie needs the support more right now." "So, you're refusing to walk me down the aisle because Natalie is jealous?" I needed to hear him say it clearly. I'm choosing to support both my daughters by not participating in a way that causes one of them pain, he replied, his tone, suggesting this was a perfectly reasonable position. Besides, can't Ryan's father do it? Or you could walk alone. You're a modern woman after all. Tears welled in my eyes and I couldn't stop them from spilling over. The waitress approaching our table with entrees saw my face and quietly retreated. Don't cry in public, Maxine, Dad said, looking around uncomfortably. People are watching. This isn't as big a deal as you're making it out to be. I wiped my eyes with the cloth napkin, leaving smudges of mascara behind. It is a big deal to me, Dad. And the fact that you can't see that breaks my heart. Now you're being manipulative, he said sharply. This guilt-tripping isn't attractive. You should understand by now that your sister has always needed more emotional support. That's just how it is in our family. Something snapped inside me then. Years of accepting less, of making excuses, of prioritizing everyone's feelings but my own, it all crystallized into perfect clarity. Thanks for showing me who really matters to you, I said, quietly gathering my purse and jacket. I won't forget this moment. Maxine, don't be childish. Sit down and finish your lunch, Dad called as I stood. I've lost my appetite, I replied, placing enough cash on the table to cover both meals, and possibly a father. I walked out of that restaurant with tears streaming down my face, but my back straight. The drive home was a blur, and when I arrived at the apartment I shared with Ryan, I collapsed into his arms and told him everything. I'm so sorry, Max, he whispered, holding me tightly. You deserved better than that. So much better. That night I cried harder than I had since my mother died. I cried for the father I needed but never really had. I cried for the little girl who kept trying to earn love that should have been freely given. And I cried for the bride who would not have her father walk her down the aisle. But when morning came, something had changed. The grief remained, but alongside it was something new: clarity. And with that clarity came determination. I woke up the morning after my disastrous lunch with Dad feeling different. The hurt was still there, a deep ache in my chest, but something else had emerged alongside it, a sense of clarity I'd never experienced before. As I watched the early morning light filter through our bedroom curtains, Ryan still sleeping beside me, I realized I had a choice to make: continue trying to please people who would never be satisfied, or reclaim my wedding and make it truly Mina. The first thing I did was call my therapist, Dr. Amara, whom I'd been seeing sporadically since college. She fit me in for an emergency session that afternoon. What your father did was reveal his limitations, she told me, after I recounted the lunch conversation. This painful moment has given you a gift, the truth. Now you get to decide what to do with that information. What do you mean? I asked, still feeling raw. I mean that this is an opportunity to set new boundaries based on reality rather than hope. For years, you've been hoping your father and sister would change if you just found the right approach. Now you know they won't, at least not right now. So what would your wedding look like if you designed it around? What will bring you joy rather than what will keep them from being upset? That question changed everything. When I got home, Ryan and I sat down at our kitchen table with a bottle of wine and completely reimagined our wedding. What would we do if we weren't trying to accommodate Natalie's jealousy or earn Dad's approval? First, I said, taking a deep breath, I don't want Natalie in the wedding party anymore. Not after everything she's done. Ryan nodded supportively. That makes sense. She hasn't acted like someone who wants to celebrate us. And for walking me down the aisle. I trailed off, still feeling the sting of Dad's rejection. Ryan took my hand. What feels right to you? You could walk alone. I could meet you halfway. Or maybe there's someone else who's been more of a supportive presence in your life. An image of Ryan's Uncle Jack flashed in my mind. His kind eyes, his gentle offer of support, the way he'd immediately made me feel safe and valued. What about your Uncle Jack? I suggested hesitantly. Would that be weird? I know he's your family, not mine, but he's been kinder to me in our few meetings than my dad has in years. Ryan's face lit up. Jack would be honored. He already thinks the world of you, and he's exactly the kind of person who understands the importance of showing up for people. Let's call him. We invited Jack over for coffee the next day, and when we explained the situation and my request, his eyes misted over. Maxine, he said, his voice gruff with emotion. I would be deeply honored to walk you down the aisle. Thank you for trusting me with this important role. As he was leaving, Jack pulled me aside. I had a similar situation with my own father. He was a good man in many ways, but emotionally unavailable. I spent decades trying to earn his approval before I realized I was chasing something he wasn't capable of giving. Setting boundaries wasn't easy, but it was necessary for my own well-being. How did you do it? I asked. By accepting that I couldn't change him, only how I responded to him. And by building my own chosen family of people who could give me what I needed. He squeezed my shoulder gently. You're already doing that with Ryan and his family. That takes courage. With Jack confirmed for walking me down the aisle, Ryan and I continued revising our plans. We reviewed the guest list, removing some of Dad's friends I'd never been close to and adding more of our own friends instead. We changed the seating arrangement so Dad and Natalie would be in the family section but not front and center. We added a special memorial candle ceremony for my mother, something Dad had previously dismissed as too depressing. I called Layla to tell her about removing Natalie from the bridal party. Finally, she exclaimed, "I've been biting my tongue for months watching her undermine you. What can I do to help?" "Just stand by me," I replied. "There's going to be fallout when they find out." Layla's voice turned serious. "Max, I've been standing by you since we were 18. That's not changing now. Whatever you need, I'm there." Our wedding planner, Teresa, was equally supportive when I explained the changes. "Honey, you wouldn't believe how many family dramas I've seen around weddings," she said. "Your job is to make decisions that will give you happy memories, not accommodate people who aren't considering your feelings. We can make all these adjustments work." Ryan's parents were my next concern. They were contributing financially to the wedding, and I worried these changes might upset them. Instead, they invited us over for dinner and expressed nothing but support. "We're sorry you're going through this," Ryan's mom said, giving me a warm hug. "But we want you to know that we already consider you our daughter. Whatever you need to make your wedding day special, we're here for you." Ryan's dad nodded in agreement. "And don't worry about the financial aspects. Our gift is for your happiness, not to control any decisions." Their unconditional support brought fresh tears to my eyes, but for once they were tears of gratitude rather than pain. As the weeks passed, I went through a process of grieving the wedding I thought I would have. There were moments of doubt and sadness nights when I'd wake up wondering if I was making a huge mistake by rocking the family boat. But each time those doubts crept in, I reminded myself of Dad's words at that lunch and how they had made me feel small, unimportant, an afterthought in my own life. Each decision we made to reclaim our wedding brought a new sense of freedom. We changed the first dance song to one that had special meaning for Ryan and me, rather than the traditional waltz Dad had insisted upon. We added personalized vows, something Natalie had called cheesy and self-indulgent. We even changed our honeymoon destination from the beach resort my family had suggested to the mountain retreat we'd always dreamed of visiting. Through it all, I kept these changes private from my father and Natalie. I wasn't ready for that confrontation yet, and part of me hoped that perhaps Dad would come around on his own. We still had 3 months until the wedding. Maybe he would realize what he was throwing away and approach me with an apology. But even as I allowed myself that small hope, I prepared for the more likely scenario that Dad and Natalie would discover these changes and react with anger and accusations. I worked with Dr. Amara on scripts for responding calmly but firmly. I practiced setting boundaries without apologizing. And I reminded myself daily that I deserved a wedding day filled with love and support, not tension and resentment. The hardest part of standing up for yourself, Dr. Amara told me, is accepting that some people will be upset by your boundaries. That doesn't mean your boundaries are wrong. It means they were benefiting from your lack of them. As we finalized our revised wedding plans, I felt a surprising sensation growing within me: excitement. For the first time since my engagement, I was genuinely looking forward to my wedding day. Whatever happened with my father and sister, I knew I would be surrounded by people who truly celebrated Ryan and me, and that I realized was what a wedding should be about. The confrontation I'd been bracing for came exactly 7 weeks before the wedding. Natalie called Layla about a bridesmaid dress, fitting only to discover she was no longer in the bridal party. Within an hour, my phone was blowing up with texts and calls from both Natalie and my father. I took a deep breath and answered Natalie's call first, putting it on speaker so Ryan could hear while he sat supportively beside me. "What the hell, Maxine?" Natalie screamed without preamble. "You kicked me out of your wedding and didn't even have the decency to tell me yourself. I had to find out from your stuck-up friend." I made a decision based on what would make our wedding day most comfortable for everyone, I replied, trying to keep my voice steady. Given the tension and your expressed discomfort with the attention I'm receiving, I thought this would actually be a relief for you. Don't you dare spin this like you're doing me a favor, she shouted. This is about punishing me and Dad because he won't play his part in your perfect little princess fantasy. You're being spiteful and childish. I'm sorry you see it that way, I said, sticking to the script I'd practiced with Dr. Amara. This isn't about punishment. It's about creating a celebration where everyone present is genuinely happy for us. Everyone meaning your precious new family. Those people aren't your real family, Maxine. They're just playing nice because that's what people do before weddings. Wait until they see the real you, the selfish attention-seeking you that we've had to deal with your whole life. Her words were designed to wound, to make me doubt myself and the connections I'd built. In the past, I might have crumbled, apologized, changed my plans to soothe her anger. But not this time. Natalie, I love you because you're my sister, but I don't like how you treat me. I'm not going to argue about this. The decision is made. You and Dad are still invited to attend the wedding as guests, and I hope you'll come and be happy for me. But if you can't do that, I'll understand your absence. You'll regret this, she hissed before hanging up. I sat there trembling slightly, but also feeling a strange sense of calm. I'd stood my ground without yelling or apologizing. It was a small victory, but significant. My phone rang again almost immediately. Dad this time. Ryan squeezed my hand as I answered. What is going on? Maxine, Dad demanded. Your sister is hysterical. She says you've kicked her out of the wedding party without any explanation. Tell me this is some kind of misunderstanding. It's not a misunderstanding, Dad. After our lunch, where you refused to walk me down the aisle because Natalie was uncomfortable with the attention I was getting, I realized I needed to make some changes to our wedding plans. So this is retaliation. His voice rose in anger. I expected better from you, Maxine. You've always been the mature one. There it was again, the expectation that I would be the mature one, while everyone else was allowed to behave however they wanted. This isn't retaliation, Dad. It's me making decisions about my wedding based on what will create a joyful, drama-free day for Ryan and me. Natalie has made it clear throughout the planning process that she's uncomfortable with the wedding. Now, she doesn't have to participate in a way that makes her uncomfortable. And what about me? He demanded. Am I still invited to this wedding, or have you replaced me too? I took a deep breath. You're still invited as a guest. But yes, I've asked someone else to walk me down the aisle. There was a moment of stunned silence before he exploded. Who could possibly take my place? I'm your father. Ryan's Uncle Jack has agreed to do it. You're choosing a stranger over your own family. I can't believe you would disrespect me like this, after everything I've done for you. I felt a flash of anger. What exactly have you done for me, Dad? You've consistently put Natalie's feelings above mine my entire life. You refuse to walk me down the aisle because it might make her uncomfortable. You've never once during this entire wedding planning process asked what would make me happy. That's not fair, Maxine. I raised you, put a roof over your head. You did the bare minimum a parent is legally required to do, I interrupted, surprising myself with my boldness, and I'm grateful for that. But emotional support, validation, being proud of me, those things were always reserved for Natalie. If you go through with these changes, he said, his voice low and threatening, I won't come to the wedding at all. Neither will Natalie. Is that what you want? To have no family there on your big day? For a split second, I hesitated. The little girl inside me who still craved her father's approval wanted to backtrack to apologize to fix things. But the woman I had become knew better. What I want is to be surrounded by people who love and support both Ryan and me on our wedding day. If you can't be one of those people, then yes, I would prefer you don't attend. Dad's voice turned cold. Fine. Don't come crying to me when you realize what a mistake you've made. This wedding is clearly more important to you than family. No, Dad. My self-respect is more important than continuing to accept being treated as less than. The door is open if you ever want to talk about this calmly, but I won't be changing my mind about the wedding plans. After hanging up, I burst into tears, releasing the tension of the confrontation. Ryan held me, stroking my hair. I'm so proud of you, he whispered. That took incredible strength. The weeks following that confrontation were difficult. Natalie launched a social media campaign against me, posting vague but pointed comments about toxic family members and narcissistic brides. Several extended family members called to ask what was happening, having heard only Natalie and Dad's version of events. I explained my side calmly without vilifying my father and sister, and was surprised to find many relatives were supportive, or at least understanding. Ryan's family closed ranks around us, offering additional help with wedding preparations and emotional support. His mother called me daily just to check in, and his cousins organized a surprise bridal luncheon to lift my spirits. Jack took his role extremely seriously, even asking if we could practice the walk down the aisle so he would get it just right for you. The morning of our wedding arrived with perfect early summer weather. I woke in the hotel suite surrounded by Layla and my other bridesmaids, all buzzing with excitement as hair and makeup artists worked their magic. Despite everything, I felt a sense of peaceful certainty. This was right. Ryan was right. Our life together would be right. As I was putting the finishing touches on my makeup, my phone chimed with a text from my father. "We need to talk before the ceremony." I'm in the hotel lobby. My stomach clenched. Part of me wanted to ignore it to protect the joyful bubble we'd created. But another part hoped for reconciliation even now. I showed the text to Layla, who frowned. "You don't have to see him, Max. Not today of all days." "I know," I replied, "but I'm going to send a quick response." I texted back. "Today is about joy and celebration, not drama or difficult conversations. If you're here to support us with love, you're welcome at the ceremony. If not, we can talk after the honeymoon." Dad didn't respond, and I refused to let his silence dampen my spirits. I finished getting ready, stepped into my dress, an elegant A-line with subtle lace detailing that made me feel like the best version of myself, and prepared to leave for the garden venue. When I arrived at the venue and peeked into the ceremony space, my heart swelled. Everything was exactly as we'd planned. Wildflowers in soft blues and purples adorning the aisle, a beautiful floral arch where Ryan and I would exchange vows, and rows of white chairs filled with people we truly cared about. And there, waiting in the antechamber, was Jack in a perfectly tailored navy suit with a boutonniere matching my bouquet. When he saw me, his eyes widened with appreciation. "Maxine," he said, his voice thick with emotion, "you look absolutely radiant. My nephew is the luckiest man alive." I hugged him carefully, mindful of my dress. "Thank you for doing this, Jack. It means more than I can express." "The honor is all mine," he replied, offering his arm with a formal flourish that made me laugh. As the coordinator signaled it was almost time, I glimpsed movement at the back of the garden. My father and Natalie had arrived and were being seated in the family section, not in the front row but a few rows back. My heart rate quickened at the sight of them, but I took a deep breath and focused on the moment at hand. The music began, not the traditional wedding march, but a string quartet version of the song Ryan and I had danced to on our first date. Jack squeezed my hand reassuringly. "Ready?" he asked. I nodded, suddenly too emotional for words. Walking down that aisle with Jack's steady support, seeing Ryan's face light up as I approached, feeling the genuine joy radiating from our guests, it was everything a wedding procession should be. I caught a glimpse of my father's face as we passed his row. He looked stunned, perhaps, finally realizing what he had given up by prioritizing Natalie's comfort over this moment with his daughter. The ceremony itself was beautiful in its authenticity. We exchanged personalized vows that made both of us tear up. We included a candle lighting ceremony for my mother, acknowledging her absence while celebrating her lasting influence on my life. And when the officiant pronounced us husband and wife, the cheers that erupted felt like a collective affirmation of our journey. As we turned to face our guests as a married couple, I noticed that my father and Natalie's seats were empty. They had slipped out during the ceremony, unable or unwilling to stay for the celebration. A small pang of sadness hit me, but it was quickly washed away by the wave of genuine love and support from everyone else present. The reception was even more joyful without the tension my father and sister would have brought. We danced, feasted, laughed, and celebrated with people who were truly happy for us. Ryan's parents gave a touching toast, and Layla's maid of honor speech had everyone alternating between tears and laughter. To Maxine and Ryan, she concluded, raising her glass, who showed us all that true love isn't just about finding the right person, but about building the right boundaries to protect that love. May your life together be as beautiful as you've made this day. As Ryan and I swayed together during our last dance of the night, I whispered, "Thank you for helping me find the strength to make this day truly ours." He kissed me softly. "You always had the strength, Max. You just needed permission to use it." And in that moment, surrounded by chosen family and authentic love, I knew he was right. We returned from our 2-week honeymoon in the Colorado mountains refreshed and more connected than ever. The time away had given us space to process everything that had happened and to focus on our beginning as a married couple rather than the family drama that had preceded our wedding. Reality waited for us in the form of several voicemails and messages from extended family. My cousin Sophia called the day after we got back. "I wanted to let you know what's been happening," she said hesitantly. "Uncle William has been struggling since your wedding. He won't admit it directly, but I think seeing Jack walk you down the aisle hit him hard. Aunt Martha said he left in the middle of the ceremony because he was too emotional to stay." "Too emotional or too angry?" I asked, not quite ready to assume the best. "A bit of both, maybe," Sophia admitted. "But Maxine, I think he's realizing he made a mistake. He's been asking people if they've heard from you, showing people your wedding photos that someone shared online. It's like he's trying to piece together an event he should have been part of." I absorbed this information with mixed feelings. Part of me felt a vindictive satisfaction that Dad was finally experiencing consequences for his choices. Another part, the part that would always be his daughter, felt a glimmer of hope that perhaps this could be a turning point. "What about Natalie?" I asked. Sophia hesitated. "She's not handling it well. She's been posting some pretty nasty things on social media. Aunt Martha finally called her out on it, told her she was being childish and making everything worse." I sighed. That sounded like Natalie, doubling down rather than reflecting on her role in the situation. Dad started texting and calling a few days after we returned. His messages began formally. "We should talk when you have time," and gradually became more urgent. "Please call me back, Maxine. This is important." I wasn't ready to jump into another painful conversation, so I texted back, "I need some time. I'll reach out when I'm ready to talk." 3 months after the wedding, I finally agreed to meet him at a coffee shop near my office, neutral territory where we could talk without the emotional weight of being in a family space. I arrived first and chose a table in the corner that offered some privacy. When Dad walked in, I was struck by how much older he looked than at the wedding. There were new lines around his eyes, and his shoulders seemed to carry an invisible weight. "Thank you for meeting me," he said, sitting down across from me. "What did you want to talk about?" I asked, getting straight to the point. He fidgeted with his coffee cup. "I wanted to apologize for not walking you down the aisle, for letting you down on your wedding day. I made a mistake." It was the apology I had wanted for months, but now that it was here, it felt incomplete. It wasn't just about the wedding day, Dad. It was about a lifetime of putting Natalie's feelings above mine, of making me feel like I mattered less. The wedding was just the breaking point. Dad looked genuinely confused. "I never meant to make you feel that way. You were always so capable, so independent. Natalie needed more support." "Did she need more, or did you just give her more? There's a difference." I leaned forward. "Do you know that you never once came to my college graduation? That you missed my scholarship ceremony to take Natalie shopping? That you paid for her entire education but made me take out loans? These weren't isolated incidents, Dad. They were a pattern." "I didn't," he started then, stopped looking troubled. "I didn't realize how it looked from your perspective." "It's not about how it looked. It's about how it felt. Every time you chose her over me, it hurt. Every time you dismissed my feelings as less important than hers, it taught me that I was less important." Dad's defensive posture slowly crumbled as I spoke. For perhaps the first time, he was truly hearing me. "I thought I was just being a good father to both of you in different ways," he said quietly. "Natalie needed emotional support, and you needed. Well, I thought you needed independence. What I needed was to know I mattered to you as much as she did. That my achievements were worth celebrating, that my pain was worth comforting, that my wedding day was worth showing up for, fully showing up, not with conditions based on Natalie's comfort." Dad was silent for a long moment, absorbing my words. "I've made a mess of things, haven't I?" he finally said. "Yes," I replied honestly, "but acknowledging that is a start." We talked for almost 2 hours that day. It wasn't a magical resolution. Decades of family dynamics don't change in one conversation, but it was the first time we'd ever had a truly honest discussion about our relationship. As we were getting ready to leave, Dad asked hesitantly, "Where do we go from here?" "That depends on you," I said. "I'm willing to work on our relationship, but things need to change. I need you to respect my boundaries, to hear me when I tell you something hurts, and to stop expecting me to accommodate Natalie's jealousy at my own expense." Dad nodded slowly. "I can try to do that. And what about Natalie? Will you talk to her too? When she's ready to have an honest conversation without blaming me for everything, yes. But I'm not chasing after her approval anymore." An unexpected development shifted our family dynamics even further when Natalie's relationship with John imploded spectacularly a month later. She moved back into Dad's house temporarily and immediately demanded his full attention and support through her breakup. For the first time, Dad found himself trying to balance attention between his daughters in a new way. He called me one evening sounding exhausted. "Natalie's been crying for 3 days straight. She says I'm not being supportive enough because I had a work dinner I couldn't cancel. When I suggested she call a friend or maybe try therapy, she accused me of abandoning her. Is this what it felt like for you?" The question took me by surprise. Sometimes, yes. When my needs were treated as inconvenient or excessive, that's exactly how it felt. There was a long pause. "I'm starting to see some patterns I didn't notice before," he admitted. That conversation marked a turning point. Dad began setting gentle boundaries with Natalie for the first time in her life, and predictably, she didn't take it well. Her demands escalated, becoming so excessive that even Dad, with his Natalie-shaped blind spot, couldn't ignore the pattern anymore. After a particularly difficult week, Dad called to tell me he'd scheduled an appointment with a therapist. "I need to figure out how I got here," he said. "How I created this dynamic where one daughter barely trusted me with her feelings and the other thinks I exist solely to meet her emotional needs." I was touched by his willingness to examine his role in our family dysfunction. "That takes courage, Dad." "Too little too late, maybe," he replied quietly. "But I'm trying." Over the next year, our relationship slowly improved. We established a routine of Sunday phone calls and monthly dinners. There were still awkward moments and old patterns that needed addressing, but there was also a new honesty between us that made those conversations possible. My relationship with Natalie remained distant. She refused to acknowledge any role in the wedding conflict, maintaining that I had deliberately tried to hurt her by stealing attention that should have been shared. Dad no longer pressured me to make peace with her at my own expense, which was progress in itself. Ryan's family continued to be a source of warmth and acceptance in my life. His parents hosted us for holidays. His cousins became some of my closest friends, and Jack, dear Jack, who had walked me down the aisle, became the father figure I'd always needed. He called regularly just to check in, remembered my birthday with thoughtful gifts, and genuinely celebrated my professional achievements. The most significant moment in my healing journey came at Thanksgiving 1 year after our wedding. Dad had been invited to join us at Ryan's parents' home, without Natalie, who had refused to come if I would be there. It was the first holiday we'd spent together since the wedding. As we gathered around the table, I watched Dad interacting with Ryan's family, a bit awkward, but making a genuine effort. During a quiet moment, he leaned over and said softly, "I understand now what you meant about chosen family. These people truly care about you in ways I should have." "They do," I agreed. "But there's room for you too if you want it." Dad glanced around the table, then back at me with sad eyes. "I lost both my daughters, you know. You to my own stubbornness and failure to see your worth, and Natalie to my enabling of her worst tendencies. She barely functions independently now." "You haven't lost me, Dad," I said, surprising myself with how much I meant it. "Our relationship is different now, with boundaries I should have set long ago. But you haven't lost me." He squeezed my hand briefly, eyes glistening. "Thank you for giving me another chance. I don't deserve it, but I'm grateful." That Thanksgiving marked a new chapter in our family story. Not a perfect happy ending, real life rarely offers those, but a healthier foundation built on honesty, respect, and appropriate boundaries. The journey taught me that sometimes the most loving thing you can do, both for yourself and others, is to stop accepting scraps of affection and start requiring real respect. That family isn't just about blood ties, but about who shows up for you consistently. That setting boundaries isn't selfish, it's necessary for authentic relationships. Most importantly, I learned that I was worthy of being prioritized, not just by others, but by myself. Standing up to my father and sister was painful, but it freed me to build a life and marriage based on mutual respect rather than constant accommodation. If you're watching this and struggling with similar family dynamics, know that you deserve to be valued, to have your feelings respected, and to set boundaries that protect your well-being. True love, whether from family, friends, or partners, doesn't demand that you make yourself smaller to accommodate others' insecurities. What family patterns have you had to break free from? Have you ever had to set difficult boundaries with loved ones? Share your experiences in the comments below. And if this story resonated with you, please like, subscribe, and share it with someone who might need to hear that they deserve better too. Thank you for listening to my story, and remember, sometimes the family we choose is the one that truly helps us heal.